Now I'd like to turn to my guest for the evening. Anil, we're going to have a fireside chat today. We're not making it a formal event. Thank you very much for everyone who's come after a hard day's work. But this is more of a conversation between two people who've been doing this for too long, probably. Between us, we have many decades of experience, particularly with me in the Islamic countries and you, Anil, in India, particularly. As the global families grow, we're going to keep going.
All over the world, because about 35 million of us
Yes,
who live in about 108 countries.
there you are.
We are 1.6 billion in number. So except the moon or Mars, we are everywhere.
But soon, I think colonies will grow up wherever we can get to. So as you can hear, we have the Islamic world and the Indian world together comes to many billions soon. So we need to meet that need. I would start by asking you, in my experience, challenges of litigation are some. You must have faced other challenges in litigation. We'll then throw the floor open to people to ask what they're facing. Let's say in the last year alone, what has challenged them most? For me, I find access to justice a real issue because people who come to me for expert reports cannot afford them. And I have to turn away probably 80% of inquiries if I want to make it viable or profitable. Other experts tell me that they don't get paid for 80% of their reports because they don't ask for the money, so it never comes after they've released the report. Other challenges in global litigation are the growth of global families, as you've just said, and increasingly falling apart, and then bringing in-laws with them, worldwide assets, missing persons, missing assets, offshore, non-disclosure. So we're finding those are our challenges, and they're growing with technology. What are your challenges from an Indian perspective?
See, as I see it nowadays, our country is governed by personal laws, whether it's Hindus, whether it's Christians, whether it's Parsis, or whether it's Muslims. There are separate personal law legislations for every community, and there is no uniform civil law. So when you marry under your personal law, it's a ceremonial marriage. It's not a contractual marriage. And when a husband and a wife migrate to a foreign jurisdiction, they seek irretrievable breakdown of marriage. That doesn't work. Because irretrievable breakdown of marriage is not a ground for divorce in India. So it is not in consonance with the Indian law, and therefore it is not recognized in India. So this is a dilemma. So you have to get a divorce in India. We have a fault-based theory. But we can use a mutual consent divorce. Now, for a judge overseas to understand what's wrong, we have jurisdiction over you because of domicile. So therefore, for a judge to be explained as to what is the law of marriage and what is the law of divorce is the first challenge. The second challenge is child custody. The moment there is a dispute, the offending parent flees with the child to India. We don't recognize the Hague Convention on Child Abduction. Child removal is not an offense. For a judge overseas to understand and accept this is out of the blue. So therefore, every judge in every jurisdiction wants an expert report before the child leaves the foreign jurisdiction in a broken marriage. Can I have an ironclad guarantee? This is my expert report. 9 times out of 10 solicitors don't know what questions to frame. So they give me the problem. I frame the questions. Then they go back and get an order. And it's invariably an order whereby both parties contribute half of fee. So I think it is very important that this should be settled before you enter into an arena, or whether you can afford it or not. Rich Asians can do it. I give an hourly rate, I give them the number of hours, they give me the questions, and it's all fixed. Now, to get to this is a process which takes 3 to 6 months. It's very difficult. So, unless you pinpoint the issues in terms of questions, in terms of fee, and in terms of what the order should be, and there should be no reference to the parties, anonymization. You are not supposed to look at the facts, and you have to sign a declaration for whatever it says. So, this, I think, in practical terms, is a very important issue. For people who don't know what to do, they are clueless. They have absolutely no idea on what to do. The latest issue which I have seen developing in the UK particularly is reverse removal. Children in distress, children abused, children in neglect, children needing care, who are in foster care or are under semi-guardianship arrangements, are sought to be removed back to India because their spouse, their parents can't handle them. They are drug abusers. In one case, I found a woman was a sex worker with the husband pimping for her for drugs, and there were 3 children. They have to be relocated back. Or often there is a case of violence in the family, or there is a case of the children being beaten, etc. So, how do the children go back? The locum solicitor has no idea. The 4 solicitors in the fray also have no idea. And everybody wants to know, how do we get the children back? Is a special guardianship order recognized in India? No. India doesn't believe in foreign judgment being conclusive. They go on the welfare. So how do you move the child back? And who? Now, who's going to pay the fee? For how many hours? I make it very clear. No legal aid. Court settled hours. Settled hours. It's very taxing work. And then goes the report. But sometimes judge says, I don't agree. I've reached a stage where I get nominated by name now, mostly from the RCB. And it's supposed to be a neutral report. I think this jurisprudence has exploded all of a sudden because of numbers. So there are relocation all over India. We have 3.28 million square kilometers, 29 states and 7 union territories. And to me, even some state like Gujarat or Kerala is a foreign country. Practices, language, culture, court practices. Every high court has its own rules. Fortunately, we have a regime of family courts now. So, if a matter is brought back, sometimes the lawyer at the lowest level will go to a civil court and he'll get knocked out of jurisdiction. I think a very big requirement of sprucing up how to handle marriages and children is very essential. I have been part of the judicial network, thanks to Lord Justice Matthew Thorpe, because India was unrepresented. And I think the England does a great job in having an office of liaison judge or administrative position of head of international family law. Justice Andrew Moylan held this position. Now Justice MacDonald heads that. So it's there. The work is there, but there are not very many Mees and Aina Khans. And I don't blame local solicitors, because studying the law and keeping updated with Indian law, which is developed by judgments, not by statute. Our Marriage Act, Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, is still a copy of the Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857. We have a Guardian Wards Act of 1890, not 1980, which the British made, and in which we talk of singular custody, which is absurd. No joint shared parenting, no collective parenting, no 50-50 partnerships on parenting. So we have not developed, but the judgments have developed. Case law is taking over judicial law or statute law. We haven't changed. So the complexity of multiple Indian personal laws, and for a judge abroad to understand all this, is very difficult, because he cannot comprehend why Why cannot English law, why cannot Canadian law, Dutch law, American law apply to me? Person by virtue of downside. Because if you are Hindu by religion, the Hindu law has extraterritorial application. You carry it as a backpack. Domicile does not affect you. But in an expert report to explain to a Canadian, American, or Australian judge, it's very difficult because the mindset of laws all over the world. So, finding the questions, biggest challenge in an expert. Payment of fee, heavily negotiable. But if the paying capacity is good, fee is no problem. I just want to make sure my kid is not going back to India. Or if I'm already in India, I don't want to move back to wherever I have to go.
Thank you, Anuji. So this is a very good point to ask you. You've summarized the challenges in India superbly, and I think there are many people nodding because they can share that experience worldwide. With those of you who, like me, deal with, let's say, Kuwait 1 minute and Taiwan the next, and we've got 70 countries in what's behind me, a cross-border alliance of lawyers, of whom you've become a member, which is my alliance of experts in at least 70 countries, especially where the IAFL, we're fellows, both of us, of the International Academy of Family Lawyers. But as we've all talked, there are parts that it doesn't reach. So what do we do about those countries? And you've just summarized exactly that. First, the cost of tracing assets and people and getting expert advice and persuading a judge, maybe across 23, 25 hearings, is prohibitive, except for the maybe 1 or 2% elite. So that's the problem right there. Secondly, an aging expert population you've highlighted, because none of us are going to find anybody younger than in their 50s. Sadly, I've looked, believe me, and nobody wants to take on the mantle. It's the amount of, you don't want to say how many hours you've spent, maybe I don't either, but they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert, and we've done multiples of that in those jurisdictions. So you can't blame the youth for wanting an easier life. You and I live and breathe law, and it's a passion for us.
Absolutely.
And if we made, let's say, 20 million overnight, I would still work for fun. I don't know if you will,
Of course.
but it keeps us alive. It keeps us bouncing out of bed in the mornings. Our spouses are here. Mrs. Malhotra, Imran will both share the fact that we wouldn't be who we are.
We are very boring people.
No, we don't bore our spouses. We've been with them for decades, so that means that we're not that boring, which is good. And happily married.
Money makes the mayor go.
Money is a slight advantage if you do it well.
It's
So
not- it's
everyone,
not-
don't let us put you off. There is good money to be made. Don't let us tell the youth that there's no money in family law. There's very good money in family law. You may not be multi-millionaires overnight. That's not the field for you if you want to make money overnight. But especially those of you who are listening from abroad, the world's your oyster. You can work from anywhere in the world now with the technology. So you could be working from the beach in Thailand while you're specializing in the law of, let's say, California. It's not a problem. The biggest problem for us is what you touched on, which I want to expand on, is the multiple states. Now, I will have a case in which there's a marriage or a divorce happening in 2 states of India at one time and in England concurrently. So one person's filed one place, one's filed another place. Who's the person in time? And then we find out that somebody jumped the gun and went to England. It's crazy, isn't it? So we will have people, you'll all recognize this scenario when you have a query. Those of you who are in touch with your client onboarding teams, they struggle with this to try and even define what the problem is. Am I legally married? Am I legally divorced? Am I legally remarried? That's just the start of it. And then if you add assets in multiple jurisdictions and children, it's a recipe for disaster if, as you say, it's not managed robustly at the beginning with iron discipline. And that's where we feel there's a lot of injustice, don't we, where people didn't see what was coming and just reacted. And it just goes on and on. The judges are very frustrated by that.
Absolutely.
So that's the summary that you
Yes.
have done. You can understand that that's the same around the world.
I wish to add to this.
Yes.
See, what you just said has led to a new breed of litigation, anti-injunction suits,
Yes.
which were purely commercial in nature and for commercial litigation. So you have a parallel divorce. So you have an anti-injunction suit, and the interpretation is done by forum convenience, which is the jurisdiction which is best for both sides. But then you can stop parties, but you can't stop courts. So what do we have? We have in India what we call limping marriages.
Yeah.
You are divorced in India, but you are married. You are married in India, but you are divorced abroad. So now I have started telling clients, listen, you want to bury the hatchet? You want to settle matrimonial assets? You want to settle child custody?
Yeah.
Drop an MOU. We put that MOU along with the foreign court decree in a petition for divorce by mutual consent in India. That is the alternative way to get divorced. And that buries the domestic violence, child custody, maintenance. In India, we can have the women can have six outlets. That buries everything. And then you are happily divorced in both jurisdictions. But if you remarry without doing this, you can be caught for bigamy, which is a criminal offense.
Absolutely. Bigamy comes up a lot.
So this is a very strict requirement. And I think Aina has very well focused the issue on she and me being married to law other than our spouses. In India, we operate from a household chamber. So I sometimes have my breakfast, lunch, and dinner in my office because it's more convenient. I must finish the report. I'm billing for 10 hours, but I'll work 25 hours to make it perfect. And what I do is I make an index in the end.
Yeah.
And I say this topic, this page, this page, this page. So you see what you want to see. So expert reports is not an assignment. It is not a job. It's a passion to put things together for the reader to grasp in such a clear way that he should not need anything else. And this comes by experience.
Anil, can I say that we're very rare in doing that?
Oh,
Sadly, the amount of expert reports you read, which are just length rather than quality, and what you'll find is you have to look for the kernel of wisdom in it.
and not just copy pasting extracts from
Exactly.
judgments, and which are sometimes antique and outdated.
Yeah,
Because the person who's doing this is cheap. He's 1/3 my cost.
That's it.
But then hiring lawyers who are youngsters is not a good idea. And another thing, a matrimonial litigation involving an expert report and multi-jurisdictional disputes is a strategic game. It's like a chessboard. When a litigant comes to me, I say, listen, I came here, a litigant called me up and said, I've got this going on here, I've got this going on here. I said, listen, you're going in opposite directions in two jurisdictions. Your solicitor in England doesn't know what your lawyer is doing in India, and it's likewise. And they are only doing different things, thinking that this is the best thing. But I told them, I said, you are going to end up as a disaster. You will have no clue, and by the time you are done with the litigation, you will not be living in Canary Wharf. You are going back to Delhi or in Gujarat. The best way is to tell people, sit down together, do an MOU, and sort it out. I'll give you another example. I have a Polish client and an Indian gentleman who is an American citizen, bitterly in a fight with an 11-year-old daughter who's passionately attached to both sides. They have sorted out everything in the US. Now, the US court says the child is not going back to India for a holiday. Expert report. I gave an expert. We drew up an MOU. It's novel. Yeah, we just broke through the wall and came out with an MOU. And in the MOU, you lay down if the child goes to India, the father will not contest, the father will abide by the convention, blah, blah, blah. and we have 2 affidavits, guarantees and supports. So when the child comes to India, the passport is deposited with my Delhi office or with my Delhi associate. And when the child is to go back, go back. So this is a devisation. This is breaking the wall, going through the mountain with an expert report.
But may I ask you, is there any incentive for lawyers to talk about the ethical side, which is to try and resolve issues early and not spend huge amounts of money litigation? What's the incentive for a lawyer to do that when they're paid more for fighting in court?
See, Aina, you and I have reached a stage where money doesn't matter.
That's the point.
I had a case in Kerala with 2 twins, and the mother being there in Kerala for about 6 months, and the man chasing up from UK to British court order. The judge refused outrightly. Then I told her, I said, listen, there is no other matrimonial litigation for the parties. There is a chance of settlement. But sadly, all lawyers will be very unhappy with this. But where is my happiness? I told the judge, there is a chance of settlement.
Yeah.
With two small girls. Let's try to save the marriage. Let's get them to mediation.
And that sums up
But
the
Aina, you're right. If you were to go to, I can't say much.
Yeah.
They would rather multiply the litigation and not make the litigation cohesive.
So there are opposing forces here. They're pulling families apart, and the judges are very much giving a very strong signal that the lawyers should not be litigating in this way. And alternative dispute resolution is the way ahead. Look at arbitration, look at private hearings. The English justice system is in turmoil. It's already, before the pandemic, it was overstretched. I think we actually envy India in many ways, where your reliance on technology and the fact you can take an iPad and draw up your order, send it to the judge, and it's ready. You may be very shocked to find what's happening in our courts. English justice was the beacon in the world, but I don't see that existing for much longer if it continues to be underfunded, with a real lack of judges, and most of them taken up with a care system, with social services cases. So we could be listed at a hearing. The foreign clients will think they're going to get justice because they've got a date, a time, an appointed judge, and a time estimate. And how do we explain that it's been pulled? Because that judge has got to go somewhere else and hear another case, and they're floating.
Circuit judge.
Circuit judges, High Court doesn't have as much of a problem, but then the High Court has, I think now, a 7 million minimum jurisdiction level. So you can't take every case there. The lower judge will transfer up if it's needed, but most of the complexities of international law are covered by very high quality judges at a lower level now. So we don't need to put everything to High Court. So we could safely file in our local court here and get a very high quality of judge, but it varies by postcode, by province, etc. My experience, when I'm asked by clients particularly to go and be an advocate in Leeds High Court, let's say, it's an easy train ride up, and it's very enjoyable because you're heard straight away and you've got a very high quality of judge. So it's actually counterintuitive. You get a better quality maybe elsewhere than in London. Everyone sees London as the divorce capital of the world, and I think we're suffering from a very busy court system. So would you say there's something to be said for settling out of court where you can, and can we, in the global challenges of litigation, help people in private hearings in alternative dispute resolution by giving the same expert report? No reason why not?
See, there is a new crop of litigation of Asians who came in the 60s and 70s, acquired multiple assets in jurisdiction on both sides. They want a clean break, they want a divorce. So when an individual report is sought, an individual expert report is sought by me, by either of the spouses, I said, India is your best bet. we give need-based maintenance. We don't do 50-50.
Yes.
So that's where a lot of things get solved. Because the moment another petition for divorce with ancillary relief for maintenance is sought,
Yeah.
then things get sorted out. And I think an expert report helps there.
Mm.
So we can resolve issues. Now, Aina Khan flagged the idea of putting people or finding people in other jurisdictions. And she led me to launch the ABL India chapter on 13th of June last year. Now, what Aina needs to do is to launch more of these desks in London, whereby people can find somebody. 9 times out of 10, nobody knows who is to be found. Who is where? Are you reachable? Are you available? Are you identified? You actually just can't pick up anybody from anywhere just because he's dirt cheap. In India, we do not have a dedicated family law bar or a dedicated family law judiciary. So it's a mixed bag. And the people at the level of the family court or the civil court are often clueless. So what Aina needs to do is to motivate more desks of different jurisdictions, which can make experts like us accessible, visible, identifiable, and reachable. Because we know what to do. For somebody who doesn't know what is to be done, he will start picking up things from here and there. It's not his fault. He hasn't done it. So I think a table of identified, recognizable, available, reachable, and cost-wise negotiable.
And honest,
Honest. I sometimes
non-corruptible
I sometimes
experts. I'm sorry to say.
when a woman comes to me with no assets, no money,
Yeah.
I do pro bono.
I'm talking about the ones who can be bought by the other side. I'm sorry to say there are countries where you think you've got an expert, somebody else will beat your price, and that expert somebody else's.
Compromised.
Yeah. That's why we do expert reports in English law that say we append an expert's report to us because the judge knows I've got something to lose in England if I do that. So I have to work only with those people who will come to those levels of trust. Because can you imagine putting your name to a report? Could be disaster, couldn't it?
My reports get quoted. You said this here. I said I'm saying the same thing here. There may be people sitting in the US and say,
Absolutely.
"Oh, he's not an expert. He doesn't know anything about Canadian law." But he's sitting in the US and commenting on Indian law without an Indian law degree.
Shouldn't be doing that.
It's a bigger dilemma. Then I am not supposed to, we under the Advocates Act of 1961 are not allowed to solicit work.
Absolutely.
So I cannot because in some jurisdictions, the experts' details, the expert's qualifications, and the expert's number of cases in which he has been given an opinion, which have been written to judgment, are more than the report actually on facts ought to say. So I cannot do that exhibition. So I tell the judge, it happened with me in Canada. I tell the judge, listen, I can't exhibit my reports. But if you want them, I'll give them to you. But how many times will that happen? The judge was fair enough to stop the expert report. I was being cross-examined. And I was attacked viciously by a barrister in a jurisdiction, saying, when did you qualify? What did you do? What are your experts? So I told the judge, is it about me or is it about the expert
I
report?
think I need your advice. In May, this is going to be the first time a hearing in which I've been told to come before the judge. Up till now, I've had the luxury of having my reports being accepted by both sides.
Cross-examination.
Down to, arms, that's it, settled. It's an increasingly litigious society. It's a Pakistan report, I can say that much, on validity of marriage certificates. There's one with the wife, one with the husband, and one original, all three different certificates. 3 names changed, permutations of spellings changed. Name it, it's there. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can buy anything you need to. And then it's a notarized stamp. You can buy it for 10 rupees. It's done. But here in England, everyone thinks oh, it's a notary public report which is worth £300. It's very different. This gentleman has been married for 26 years and is trying to deny the marriage now, after having lived with her for this long and having had 3 children, saying he was duped into the marriage, forced into it 26 years ago.
And the children came from heaven.
Heaven, forced into it again and again. And believe me, he's not giving up. The judge has tried, he's going to a final hearing now. What do we do? They're people who love their day in court. We can do our best to try and put them off. They can afford it. They're going to sit there and cross-examine us. Probably will be attacked, ripped to shreds, but we're big enough to take it. It's okay.
So what I have done, I have made a website, I made a blog, I put my expert reports.
Have you?
I put everything on it.
Everyone immediately, but Indian reports will be going on there.
Yeah. See, I can't be going around the world saying, oh, no, I've done 1,000 reports. Oh, no, I've done this here. I was just talking to Heaton. And I said, I like to put it across now.
Are you opening them up to people?
I'm not giving the reports, I'm only giving the names.
The names. So are
And
they
now
anonymized?
Redaction.
Redacted?
Well, I have a redacted list and I have a list with names. Because if you tell a judge, he says, listen, what is this? There are no names.
It could be.
What is the subject? Which court?
Yeah.
That's anonymization. And I was telling Heaton, suppose if I exhibit it, suppose if I don't anonymize it, what law am I breaking? And we were talking about a right to be forgotten. I've written a piece on it. I can say anonymize it. So I have a client in the US who took his children back, but he wants it anonymized. I said, listen, nobody's going to do it. So he filed another petition in the High Court of Gujarat and got them anonymized. But what do you do with the citation, with published citations and the judgment published already? Can you remove it? No. So if I want to be cited as an expert and I don't want to be ripped to shreds to prove that I am an expert and I'm qualified in Indian law, is more important. Mr. X sitting in US is an expert in 40 countries, including India. But he hasn't got a law degree in Indian jurisdiction. But he's an expert. He may be citing my books, 9 books, quoting me.
But there could have been a case last week that changed things. So it's precedent-based, isn't it?
No, but
it's dangerous.
I'm not soliciting. There is a disclaimer on my website. Fine. If you want to choose me, there is a list. The reports are not available.
No, of course.
So we have to manage with changing phases, and you have to curtail vexatious litigants who hire experts to rip the expert to shreds so that the report is demonetized and forgotten.
So to add another layer to the fact that, for example, one of my cases was 9 jurisdictions because the couple kept moving, buying, moving, with the husband's job, buying, moving. So the children are being abducted to a third country while the property is in England, so we're seized of it, while he's in the Far East, she's in the Middle East. It's ridiculous. You couldn't make it up. And it's only going to get more complex. We know that, but then there's Islamic law on top, Hindu law on top. So which one wins? If they didn't even get married legally in the first place, if it's just under Islam, they're legally married in all the Muslim countries because they had a nikah in England. And so my client would say, the minute I touched down in Dubai and touched the ground of the airport, I knew I was legally married. So that's a terrible nuanced position. You don't know if you're legally married. It's only when you land in another Muslim country that you're legally married. So it's another layer of complexity, isn't it? I think we should throw it open to the audience now, if I may, to say, those are our dilemmas. You've heard them. You've looked into the mind of experts. We've got a nice cross-section of people here. Solicitors, barristers, very senior barristers clerks, who actually hear the inquiries a lot, so know what's coming in, non-lawyers, trainees. So we've got a good mixture of people. And I think I'd like to ask you, what are your pain points when you're looking at international law and specifically family law at the moment? what can you remember the last year that's really troubled you? May I ask you to just throw it out there? Anybody? What has challenged you most? Any particular problems? Adam, Lewis, do cases ever come to you from abroad? Does anyone ring the barristers' chambers direct?
Yeah, quite a lot.
So do you have direct access barristers as well?
Yeah, we do direct access barristers. We've got sort of a form we have to fill out, but we get lots of calls all day.
So do you get international inquiries? So you see now that it's changing. It's not going to just solicitors in the UK, it's going direct to barristers' chambers, who you may be marketing a lot more than solicitors do. So you may get that hit and they'll come straight to you. You then, do you have to struggle with trying to understand even which counsel to put it with?
I think what happens a lot
Yep.
is that we find people make an inquiry about an international case, or a solicitor, where it's come via a solicitor, has identified that there are international elements. There may be competing jurisdictions, for example. And the question that we frequently get asked is actually the wrong question. We're being asked, do you have a dual qualified lawyer in, I don't know, Romanian or, Canadian? And the answer, of course, is no. But that's not what you should be asking us. Actually, what you need to do is you need to be asking us to recommend to you a Romanian lawyer or a Canadian lawyer who can talk to you about enforcement, because we don't know what local laws. I mean, that's why guys like you exist, to give us that advice when we need it. So it's sometimes quite frustrating because solicitors think, well, why can't you help us? Why can't you tell us what the law is in, Azerbaijan? And you don't know. And then all you can do is make an appropriate referral rather than do what they think you can do, which is actually give them the answer.
So
I think that is sometimes, and what we're trying to do, I head up the international team in, which is a subset of the family team.
If I may explain to those who are listening in, 36 Family is a leading set of chambers in the UK, and Joe Ecob is addressing us now.
Right, I should have said who I was.
I thought I'd let them all know.
And one of the things that we are going to be putting out by way of a recording next month, a group of us in chambers, is to really, and send it out to a lot of international lawyers, is to showcase what we can offer and indeed what we can't offer, so that when international solicitors or English solicitors with a case with an international element come to us, they're asking the right questions to save them time, save the client time and money, so they're more likely to enable us to give them what it is they actually want and point them in the right directions.
So if I may invite you then to, this is replicated across many chambers across the UK, and there's an unmet need. So if I may say, probably the quickest thing would be to signpost them like we do, where we can't meet the capacity or the demand, signpost them to ABLE, for example. If you know that we have a very reliable lawyer in Romania, for example, Azerbaijan, the only place at the moment I'm struggling with is Cambodia. I'm going to hold my hands up. And I found that very difficult. So if you've got any experts there, we're looking. So it's best for us to say we can't meet that need where it's drawn a blank.
But sometimes actually what people want more than anything is to be signposted to where they actually need to be.
Absolutely.
Can I ask one question?
Please.
Anya?
Yeah, sure.
And I've never really quite got to the bottom of this. In India, and it may differ from province to province, you'll probably tell me that it does. Is there a concept that we have very much now embedded in English law of the single joint expert? So instead of each side going off and instructing their own expert, they have a court-appointed joint expert. Is that a thing in India or not?
You see, in India,
No.
we have not developed a jurisprudence or a dedicated family law bar and a judiciary with the, let me put it, IQ of going into that kind of a situation. It's up to the lawyer to put it in his pleadings, whatever he wants to, and that's it. Now, to seek a joint expert or a dual qualified lawyer or a different experts is quite rare. In Bombay, the family court has come up with a child lawyer concept, a neutral lawyer for the child. That is as far as gone.
Right. But when it's experts, you've got
No, no,
competing
the
experts
expert,
usually.
see, there is a provision in the Family Courts Act that the judge is free to appoint an amicus or he's free to get a social worker or a psychologist, whatever the judge needs. And the Family Courts Act is very flexible. It exempts procedural laws of law of evidence and law of the civil procedure code out of the window. And the judge to decide dehors in the best interest of saving the family.
Is this the inherent jurisdiction?
Yes.
So the
This
nearest parallel is our inherent jurisdiction.
This is, you call it inherent because the preamble of the act says that it is an act meant to settle the disputes. So if I have a client with a child abduction issue and it is fast tracked, I give my affidavit, that is the examination, in a pen drive and serve it on the other side, and the other side comes and cross-examines. Saves a lot of time. I've done a lot of child abduction matters internationally. So the court facilitates, the court helps and abets the procedure. But then the court can take an amicus. But the expert report is not yet developed. That concept has not yet come.
We don't really have a concept of amicus here in the same way. It's developed very highly in certain jurisdictions. So the court can say, I need to appoint an amicus in place of this person who's of need.
See, I'll give you an example. I sit in the city of Chandigarh up north. A judge sitting in Kerala, reading my profile and knowing me,
Yeah.
he is sitting at the tip of the other end of India. It's easier to go to Dubai, more difficult and expensive to go to Kerala. So he says, I've got a 21-year-old autistic boy with a father in Dubai and the mother sitting in Kerala wanting access and care. There is a local legislation which permits and it made the mother a guardian of the child. But how will the order flow to Dubai? Does Indian law have application in Dubai? Was the question. So he appointed me an amicus. He says, listen, I've got two petitions before me. One is a habeas corpus petition in extraordinary jurisdiction under the Constitution of India. But under the Constitution of India, under Article 226(3), the jurisdiction of the High Court ends within the territory of India. Then there was the other petition in which the mother was to be appointed as a guardian, and it didn't work. So he told me, what do we do? So I gave him an expert report. It was a lot of labor, and by the way, it was all pro bono. Neither was I interested in the fee, but I wanted to. It was ticklish. It really kicked me, and I spent about a month, and I did online hearings for 2 or 3 hours. We made the order travel. The judge, in fact, developed that idea, and he said, in the best interest and welfare of the child, in parents' betray jurisdiction, the mother's rights of looking after the child and access to the child, which the father was totally preventing and barring, will be in the Indian consulate in Dubai.
So you can see how rare it is to have somebody like Anil who is willing to do it for the greater good, who doesn't need the money and who's in a comfortable position to be able to do
I
something.
need the money.
You do need money, but not so desperately that he won't do something that tickles him.
So
So
if this goes
it's
on,
very
and they'll start saying, you said no money.
we all want to be paid handsomely for Anil and me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, Michael Gourier from Withers. I have two points to make,
Please.
one on the financial side, one on the children's
Thank
side when it comes to international. On the finance side, you mentioned earlier the question of asset tracing. I think one of the issues that we encounter quite a lot is where people own interests in or family-owned properties in particular in different jurisdictions and with very different both ownership, approach to ownership and the opaqueness of evidence around that and also around the valuation of that. So bringing in again the experts and finding the right experts to try and drill down into that, one thing. The second point on the children's side of things is that you mentioned this earlier as well, Anna, access to justice, and certainly in here in England, and delay often, as we know, favours one party, right? In these disputes, and the lack of funding in our court system, the strain on the judicial system, on the judges, and the length of time it takes to get the courts to actually resolve things where there is a proper dispute is a major problem, because and there was only a case actually just issued this week where involving parents, child had been taken to Jordan, very young child, aged 2 was, and the court said, well, hasn't got habitual residence there yet, but the longer this delay goes on, the more the child's there integrated. You do
The status quo then will prevail.
Indeed, and that is a major problem, because we're not quick enough to get the cases into court here, because the court system does no longer allow it, or doesn't.
And dare I say, some of us are old enough to remember better days. We're old enough to remember when we could stroll in and do a wardship under the inherent jurisdiction in the High Court.
Would you have a district judge of the day or judge of the day?
Before the duty judge of the day, it's done. You can taste and smell the justice straight away, and it's so heady that it's very hard to work with the current conditions. So what we're trying to do is not live on past glories, but to try and use that knowledge, harness it worldwide. And our legacy should be that we all come together and harness the best practice as it was, and how maybe technology today can replicate that. That's the only way I can see a future, because we can't keep making the artisan loaf of bread for each person anymore. Nobody can afford it. So we do need that quality, but maybe templated as much as possible and then tailored for each person. And dare I say it, it might meet 80% of the need. So that's where I'm leaning towards. I don't know what people abroad think, but they're just not enough experts who can do it speedily enough, on time. That's the other problem with experts. They're always late. So we have a name to protect, because we have to deliver on time and be reliable.
24 to 72 hours is what I give.
Yeah.
From the date of letter of instruction.
I can't commit to that, sadly.
No,
So-
you work overnight.
Okay, so you're much harder working than I am. My husband would kill me if I committed to do an expert report within 24 hours. But I commend you for doing that.
And by the way, we don't, in India, we do not have a 5-day week. It's 7 days a week.
Again, slightly different.
Because
Here,
our
well-being is all the
yeah.
rage.
Is there any state support for legal assistance?
We have a Legal Services Act. You get represented, you get a legal aid counsel in the panel, and it's improving day by day. But I want to address.
That's better than here.
Your question.
Yes.
But I want to address on both the issues raised by you. When I get an expert report asking me, oh, these are the little properties and these are the Google photos we've taken from UK, and can you please find out what is their location and what is their valuation, and the person who owns them, even he has no clue where they are and whom they are with, because his British Asian inherited this property 50 years ago, or whom is in the hands of. I can't do anything. I am not an valuation expert. I can't go and find properties and assess them. That's something I can't do. And the litigant has actually to give me exact details. Where is it? What are the land records? Is it a urban property? Is it a rural? Is it a rural property? Where is it located? How big is it? Who has it? The man turned around and says, even I don't know anything. I said, then I'm sorry, I can't do anything. So this is a very gray area in which all this has to go to consultants.
But even where it is, where the property is identifiable,
It's very difficult.
the lack
William,
of
it's very
evidence
difficult.
around ownership
See,
causes a real problem.
the British Asian who owns it is probably a England born second or a third generation.
Inheritance.
He has never been to India. He doesn't even know where it is. And he hasn't got a land record. I am not an investigator. I am not a person who can go around and do all this. I'm an expert in law. not an expert in valuation of property.
So if I can give some.
And just one moment, and the
what
second
else?
issue,
I
delay.
want to rest a second.
Delay.
Mm,
In India, we have the same problem.
yeah.
There is a reported case, I will not take the name, of two children split between borders, one with the mother, one with the father. And when the litigation came to be decided, the court turned around and said, it's too late. The child with the mother says, I don't want to go to the father. The child with the father says, I don't want to go to the mother. So just because the woman wept in the court openly, but the judge says, I can't do anything. Because the child has lived in India for 5 years. This is a major problem now. We don't decide as fast as we ought to. I get on, when I'm a court counsel, see, we have an advantage. I am an advocate. I am a barrister and I'm a solicitor. I do the conveyancing, I do court representation, and I'm on my legs, actually. So I have a clump. My pupil master was Justice Kuldeep Singh, who I worked with for 2 years in 86 to 88. He was a barrister and he was the best person. After I learned the ropes from him, I never worked for anybody. I don't hire a QC, I don't hire a KC. So that is the kind of person you need, family court to Supreme Court, to see the litigation to an end in a swift way. Because then the judge turns around and says, oh, it's too late, he's going to school.
Can I continue from that? That's a very important point, actually.
Judicial continuity.
Continuity. We don't have judicial continuity at all. So we need counsel continuity.
And the judge changing.
That's the point.
You start all over again. You know, it's very difficult. And even if the best way is to read the earlier orders.
May I just give some good news then, because we're coming to the end now. The good news is that where there are people like you who own their own law firms abroad, they've got the power to make decisions very quickly without going to a committee, and they are owner-led law firms. So the point is
that is our friend Mr. Soberdas.
So if we can just say that that's the answer.
One-man army.
Yes.
He
The answer for
loads the
you
gun,
is.
buys the gun, loads the gun, fires the gun, cleans the gun, and keeps the gun.
And why is that? Why?
I does it daily.
Michael, when you deal with commercial law firms or commercial matters, you go to these are huge big alliances that do B2B mostly, but rather than person to person. The difference with Able that I wanted you to point out is that Able is owner-led. So on a WhatsApp, I can reach that lawyer in, let's say, Romania straight away and say, I've got a case for you. Give it your own personal attention. You'd be amazed on WhatsApp. They're so fast worldwide. I get quicker responses and LinkedIn's actually very good. A lot of them are very good on LinkedIn. They're much more technically astute than we think. Their Wi-Fi is better than ours. And so wherever they are in the world, they'll get back to you fast. Okay? By the time you wake up in the UK, you'll have an answer. And they would have made a decision. They wouldn't have to go to a committee or a big law firm. So it actually helps us to have these small. I went for the small to medium-sized firm rather than the larger firms. It gives me more control on the quality because there's a name. Anil will not put his name to a report that he didn't see or sign off. So that's your good news here. The other bit of good news is it's
I want to add
fast.
one thing here.
It's much faster.
Family law litigation cannot be a litigation where you talk to a different person every time.
Can't.
You have to be the man answering the question.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'll get back to you in 2 hours. But Aina, we have the danger of falling into WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and checking your phone.
No. That's only to allocate the case, not to run the case. Please, thank you for allowing me to highlight that. There may be lawyers running cases on WhatsApp. It's risk management, everyone. Our insurance does not cover us for running cases on WhatsApp. So please, young people, don't do that. What it does, David Hodson, my good friend David Hodson will tell you, the older you get, the more simple you want life. He runs his life on a WhatsApp just to allocate, close the lid, then go back and review. The case is being run on your case management software. The file is speaking for itself. If I go under a bus or you go under a bus, the file still has real-time information because the team should be able to run with it. So I hasten to say what's in here should be on the file. It's very, very important for risk management.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
it speeds it up. It allows us to reach people on WhatsApp to get the job done and then review. That's all that I'm saying. It helps us. Please.
One, just picking up from the outset, the excellent presentation, thank you, on early door and the anonymisation. There's been some very recent Bar Council guidance here in London about warning about or giving guidelines and warnings. I don't know whether you've seen it on the use of AI.
And there is a legislation which you told me about.
Yeah.
I was not aware of it. But MDSME, what is it?
GDPR.
GDP.
GDPR, of course.
But on the use of AI, for research purposes or whatever, or the creation of input documents, it's absolutely essential not to put confidential information into that, because that is then out there.
It's all-
Can I caution everyone on that? Michael, thank you for raising that. Chat GPT, you might all be having a great time, enjoying it, putting your queries in. Please do not put your clients' names.
Right,
all
any
locations
confidential,
in
any
there.
privileged or
Change the country,
confidential
change
information.
everything.
Yeah, that was highlighted in the recent LEAP webinar on the Law Why, which is the AI.
They said the
that
same.
They said
Okay.
the same.
It's very risky, isn't it?
Yeah, so you have to be really.
So there's a world out there and they
Looking
own your
to the
data.
future,
They own your data once
looking
it's
to the
gone.
current.
Oh, my goodness. So it's exciting times, but within risk parameters. Okay. Now we're about to, we're actually going a little bit over our end time of 7 o'clock. We're all enjoying ourselves so much.
And we
It's
can
time for
walk
one.
throughout the night.
We're going to meet over dinner. If anyone wants to join us for dinner, we're walking down the road to a lovely Thai place and we can continue the conversation. But maybe one quick question if we can finish it. So if anyone's desperate to ask something, you can ask.
I just have a very
Yes,
quick
please.
question. So I'm recently dealing with a case where the divorce took place 25 plus years ago, and the couple has now decided to proceed with financial,
Those
settlement
taking place where
30
25
years nearly.
in the UK.
Okay.
And the couple has now decided that they want to proceed with the financial settlement and reach an agreement because the husband's really unwell and his time may be coming close. So, for example, because you're based in Chandigarh mostly, have you come across a situation like this where the divorce happened a long time ago and the couple is now trying to reach a financial settlement?
yes, see, people just break up and they don't settle. They leave things loose.
They do.
Because it's socially bad, because the children say, oh, forget it.
That's exactly what's happening.
This is a social issue, this is a religious issue, this is a old school of thought issue,
Right.
morality issue. We don't go around with knives and swords, so let's split, let's do it right away. It happens. And then they don't know what to do.
Absolutely. It's a very good question.
How many wills? People make one will in the UK. We don't have an inheritance tax in India. You're making a blunder.
Yeah.
So I tell people, listen, you have to make 2 separate wills. And then sometimes you have to register the will, so it's executed in England. But then there is an Indian will of assets registered in India. When you need to probate the will, you need the witnesses to come in and depose. It happened with me in one case. One witness got 8, second one was dead.
Oh, please don't. We could be here all night once we start on those. Honestly, it's fascinating, isn't it? We can talk all night
Yeah,
about some
yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
It happens, and I can see there are lots of interesting questions out there, but sadly, we have to come to a close today. This was a small experimental seminar today. We moved into these offices on 1st of December. We had a office warming party in December, and we enjoyed this immense space a lot. So we asked family lawyers who came, would you be interested, probably bi-monthly, to have a gathering where we could come together with the thorny issues that we're struggling with. It's a very lonely life separately, trying to work all this out. Would you come with your different pain points and share them? And there's a real willingness to do collaborative working. There's plenty of work going around. Nobody's scared about anything being poached. So we have had a real interest in doing this. I wanted to keep this very small to start with, because if you have 50 people, you can't get this kind of atmosphere. So I hope you've enjoyed it very much, as in you've got more in-depth experience from the man on the ground in India. And as you've said, Anil, we want many of you around the world in different desks. I want to say a personal thanks to Anil for coming here and addressing us. Thank you very much. And hopefully you'll keep it very busy in India, okay, when you've got your cases.
Next time ABA London will sponsor my visit.
Yes, that's keep us so busy we can sponsor him to keep coming
No,
over.
I'll come on my own. No.
I'm coming to India instead.
No, no.
And
We should develop this
Yes.
and enlarge the group. And
if it
maybe
works, I think we replicate.
maybe hold this once in 6 months. I'll fly in, no worries.
There we are. So we've got an offer to come in twice a year already.
Absolutely.
Keep your questions coming on India. But if you've enjoyed it, tell everybody you know, tell at least 3 people. So you'll remember what you learned today. What do we do to increase access to justice for the people who are the wealthiest, but then also those who can't afford law? What are the best things that you've learned today to do that? Go to the best expert early and plan ahead. Be in the driving seat. That's what I think your big takeaway is today. Thank you very much, everybody. Keep in touch.
William's last question. Where are the cocktails?
Michael.
Oh, please. There's some. I could see there's a lot of brandy outside in the client space. I have no idea. I wonder if it's real. But there's lots of it. If anyone wants to sample that, I haven't. I don't. So we're going to love you and leave you, as they say. Thank you, everyone, for attending worldwide. Goodbye.
Thank you for
Take
having
care. Thank you.